Pentagram. Hopefully everybody is having a wonderful time tonight. It is a pleasure to once again be here for you all this evening. And I hope that everyone is ready for a night of the spooky, the scary, the eldritch, as this particular episode of Radio 616 will be much more akin to paying an homage to the Vincent Price Radio Theaters. We got a few scary stories that we're going to read for you all. There will still be a few musical numbers in between here and there, and please stop petting Husk if he doesn't want to be pet, thank you. But I do digress. This is going to be a little bit more of a scarier show. But I feel the need to branch out and do other radio programs from time to time, because if I just did the same old hat, well, then everybody would just get completely bored now, wouldn't they? But it's an honor and a pleasure to see you here. Let us go ahead and welcome our fine folks from the Pentagram who are currently listening in as we speak. We got our good friend Steph first here, fast fan, one of the fastest fans of the Stock of Iron channel. Thank you for tuning in once again, my dear. I hope that you will be thoroughly entertained. We got Angel Dust. It's a pleasure to see you. Hopefully life is treating you well. Your Majesty is in the house spanning docks. We got Vincent. Speaking of Vincent Price, a fellow Vincent. Inked and Beautiful. It's a pleasure to see you again. Welcome, welcome to the show. Hail to the Silly Frog Animations. Are you an animator? Well, that's absolutely fantastic. We'll have to give that a gander now, won't we? We got ourselves Nifty hanging out. It's good to see you. There's a cockroach on 12. You can deal with it whenever you see fit. The good Cassie Alice Chuck. Finally, don't have school tomorrow because I have an appointment. Excellent. Well, I'm glad that you're able to tune in to our broadcast tonight. We have, of course, Dan Funk, the great Dan Funk. And the Hasman Hotel likes you. The great Dan Funk, we really need to get that funky beat that Snowdub has for you. It's a pleasure to see you here. And thank you for loving the stream. And, of course, Husker is providing libations for the fine folks tonight, so long as you are good to drink. Yes, indeed. And we got some popcorn, pour some Sazerac. We're not drinking this evening, because I still have another show. Mr. Stock still has another show to put on with Alf later on after Taco Tuesday at Snowdub, so at around 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central. So be sure to stay tuned for that. From what I've gathered, Mr. Rico got caught. I mean, he's a bit of a cocaine dealer. And he got caught in a recent, let's just say, drug bust in Venezuelan waters. Let's see here. We have Ali, J23, a pleasure. Welcome to the show. Cal1 Fish, a pleasure to see you yet again. And Julian Arroyo. Ladies and gentlemen, the most handsome Julian has arrived. Madagascar reference. Welcome, welcome one and all. Somebody is requesting the Telltale Heart and the Pit and the Pendulum. I've done the Telltale Heart plenty times. But I've never orated the Pit and the Pendulum. In fact, that's not a bad idea. Let's do that one as well this evening. The Pit and the Pendulum is another personal favorite. So yes, I feel the need to go ahead and do that one as well. So I think we'll go ahead and get right to it. Our first story tonight is a short one, a more modern creepypasta, as it were. Let's go ahead and prepare ourselves for a little bit of that eldritch terror. Does that sound good for you all? Sounds good for me. Let's go ahead and warm up the old voice box and take this one out for a spin as soon as I find what I need to find. Terror! Intrigue! The future of radio entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, is here. Join us tonight as we embark on a few scary, mysterious stories that will tickle the senses as well as haunt the soul. The theater of the mind was over the airwaves long before the television, and we are going to be paying an homage to those stories tonight. First up on the bracket is a tale of possession. This poor girl is losing her friend to something unknown, unseeable, unthinkable, and absolutely terrifying. Join us as we read our first scary story this evening, and thank you for tuning in to Radio 616 AM modulation. Prepare yourselves. And now, without any further fanfare, tonight's first story. It took over my friend. Thank you very much, Rumi. And now, let's go ahead and get to our first oration, shall we? This is It Took Over My Friend, and welcome back, Daytona. My friend, Vespera, has always been the best person ever. She's always been there for me. She always makes me smile, and even when I'm having an awful day. Other than a perfect personality, she has always been beautiful. Every single person I've ever met has praised her beauty. She was also always so innocent and almost naive. However, as she changed, she certainly changed. It all started when she started doing weird stuff. She told me a couple of different times that she wanted to try different things. She wasn't trying to do normal teenage girl stuff. Oh, no. She was trying to learn voodoo, magic, using different things to try to connect with ghosts, spirits, etc. I told her that it probably wasn't a good idea, but she insisted that I should support her, just like how she always supported me. I told her that I wasn't going to complain. I also told her that I can't make myself support the mistakes that she is making. As months went by, we stayed in contact, hung out in school. At first, she seemed like the Vespera that I always knew. Little did I know, she would become a totally different person. It happened very slowly. It was like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. However, she wasn't a butterfly. She went home from being super sweet to everyone to just being sweet with guys. She went from wanting to wait till marriage to doing it on the first date. Her once authentic personality slowly faded away. Now all that remained was the desire for men. All she talked about was getting them to the opposite sex and would bring other girls down, insulting them and even threatening them. Why would she do this to other girls, even her friends? All she wanted was attention from the guys. I originally thought that she felt pressured to be like this. Perhaps it was insecurities. I slowly learned that I was wrong. It wasn't her. The other person sounded like Vespera, looked like Vespera, was in the same social circle as Vespera, but it wasn't her. She was now messing about with just about every other single individual in school. The most scary thing that happened was that the guys started going missing. Eventually you'd notice a pattern. She goes on a date, and I comes up missing within a couple of days. Over and over, a recurring pattern that had to be stopped. I wasn't the one who stopped her. I wish that I was. I always daydreamed how I could have helped her before it was too late. The police were the ones who stopped her. She was arrested after being caught attempting to do something to some random person who didn't even go to my school. Authority says that she didn't know what happened. They claim that her eyes changed colors and that there was screaming and screeching. And the man was very, very drained. The same guy made a statement, his exact words, it felt as though my soul was being dragged out of my body. Like all of me was being drained. I know it's not her. Whatever she was messing with took her over. It took over my friend, and one day, I hope to find out what it is. ratings. Yes. Audio books, yes. 2 Alastors. Hello, welcome. That's a good opener, in my opinion. If I do say so myself. Yes, I'm doing something ridiculously stupid, but if you care about me, you'll shut up and support me guilt trip. I know a few people that are doing that right now. Inside jokes, am I right? This is much like an audiobook. I'm orating these, I'm reading these professionally live. I hope that you all enjoy that. We will be doing the Pit to the Pendulum as our end segment this evening, per our good friend, Jason Love, if you're still here. And what is indeed up, my friends? Welcome to the show. Shrubby is very blunt. Don't worry about him. You two can get along. Shrubby's always going to be Shrubby. He comes in throwing bricks, as it were. So, but he is a good friend of the channel and a long-time supporter. We'll be right back after these few messages from some of our pseudo-sponsors. We'll see you in just a few, with a few musical numbers and maybe some dad jokes. How's that sound?
What's that burning up the road? Is it a wildfire? Nuclear fallout? No, it's the new Chrysler's Corvega Atomic V8. The fastest automotive vehicle ever built. And what makes the Corvega faster than any other car? Why, it's the fins! These stylish tail fins aren't just for show. They're the exact same fins you'll find on ships NASA engineers for spaceflight. What does that have to do with automobiles? Nothing, if you're talking about the cars produced by our competitors. But the Corvega isn't just a car. It's a giant leap forward, delivered by a company with the know-how and ingenuity to reach for the moon, just like America. Chrysler, America's #1 producer of nuclear-powered automobiles.
This is a man who smokes Grey Tortoise cigarettes. What kind of a man is he?
I'm the type of man who likes to work on my car. I like to take it apart and put it back together. I get to working on it and forget where I am, what time it is. Sometimes I even forget to eat.
You don't forget to smoke, though, do you?
I never forget to smoke. I might forget other things, like picking up my son from soccer practice or turning off the stove. But I never forget to smoke.
That's because you're a man's man, a Grey Tortoise man. You don't let parental responsibilities or a combustible gas leak get between you and a job well done. Why don't you have a smoke right now? You've more than earned it. Grey Tortoise, famous cigarettes. Now with a flip-top box.
Welcome to our good friend Sig Vollison, and welcome back to tonight's program. Now, have yourself a good one, Daytona. Take care. Welcome AJ Star Harker to the chat. It's a pleasure to see you all here. We have a $5 mega chat directly to the PayPal from a good friend Sig Vollison. Archpriest of the Church of the Squid, interred in the fishbowl, in the castle, in the hole, in the hollow earth, in the bottom of the sea. Say that 3 times fast. Nifty, someone ruined my dress. Well, do what I do. And make sure that they remember to rule the day. You have my permission. Where were we? Yes. The Mega Chat. $5 Mega Chat directly to the PayPal. We appreciate that. If you want to support our little endeavor, please consider donating to the PayPal, the Ko-Fi located below, or sending a super chat or member donation. Our channel is growing exponentially. We are actually 3,332 subscribers as of this notice stop. That's absolutely insane. Thank you all for all your support. Thank you for sharing the show out. BH Samurai 2020 says this is the best place to hang out and enjoy entertainment. That is our dual goal. Wow, this is what I haven't seen in a while. Hello. How have you been? Hopefully life is treating you well. A pleasure as always. A former co-worker, that one there. It's a very similar photograph to who I remember. If not, I might be getting old. So let's go ahead and get back to it, shall we? Sig Volleson wants to hear a phrase from our good friend Liberty Prime. So yes, let's her name starts with a C. Yes, thank you. You know me. Thank you. I thought that was you. Hopefully life is treating you well. Let's go ahead and have the giant robot say this particular phrase per the request of our good friend Sig Volleson, whom enjoyed a very Cthulhu Christmas, a radio production to deal with an eldritch spawn that, of course, Mr. Stark won't have anything to do with it. But here you go, my good man.
Communism is the very definition of failure.
And there we go. And welcome to ZO3 Vids. You have subscribed. Are we picking up subscribers again tonight? Thank you all so much. I guess I better pull up the old ticker here. One moment while I fetch that. The computational devices is absolute worst when you say. I blame Vox. I blame Vox for all of this. I picked up 2 new subscribers so far. Thank you all very, very much. X'd out Stark is a squid lover, apparently. Greetings, Scooby Pup. It's a pleasure to see you. I love the live streams. We appreciate your patronage, my friend. Thank you for hanging out and enjoying our broadcasts. I suppose we should go ahead and get to our next tawdry tale. This one is titled The Inheritance, and this one is about what kind of baggage one can obtain whenever. Well, it's a pretty tawdry tale. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? And thank you for tuning into Radio 616. Let's go ahead and read this one for you all. And now we need to just open up the door. We opened up the window to the outside. Let's do this one instead here. All right. Well, my parents died. Happens to all of us, I suppose, if you're lucky. They were old, too, so I'm not too torn up about it. They lived happy lives together and died a mere 3 hours apart from one another. Still, though, losing both parents in the same day, it's always going to hurt. Those final goodbyes, the ones where you know that this is it. Yeah, that's the hardest part. It makes all the memories come rushing back, forces your brain to run through every moment that it could recall being with that person. Feeling Mom's leathery, wrinkled hand wrapped so tightly around mine as she looked up at me with her old, beautiful brown eyes, I couldn't help but be brought back to my childhood. She and Dad would walk side by side with me in the middle, and they would take each of my hands into one of theirs. I'd never forget the joy I'd feel when they'd swing me back and forth as we walked. Just felt so warm and at peace. I never had any siblings. I guess they just decided one was enough. I can't say that affected me much, though. I mean, if anything, it meant more attention for me. Didn't have to share a room, didn't have to share a Christmas, and my birthday always felt like the most important day of the year. As I recollected, I could feel my mother's grip on my hand soften, and her eyes began to flutter. What followed was the monotonous beep of a heart monitor, the silence broken only by the nurses doing their job. And that was it. Mom was gone. Dad was fading quickly behind her. Literal soulmates. Seeing Dad in the state that he was triggered one more of the childhood memories, and my face became drenched in tears as I held his hand tightly. As the hours passed, eventually it seemed as though he wanted to speak, but what came out was merely a gasping wheeze that looked like it physically pained him. He looked quietly devastated at my tears, and I assumed he just wanted to reassure me that everything would be all right. He lifted a weak finger towards the shelf at the far end of the room. "The shelf?" I asked in a quaking voice with a smile. He shook his head yes, and I walked over to said shelf. All that was there was a clipboard, clamping down on some sort of printer paper, as well as a pen, as I sat by it. I picked it up and Dad began to try and speak again, urging him to bring me the clipboard. I cocked an eyebrow at this, but this was a man in his dying moments. I'm not going to tell my dad no, especially not now. With my shaking hands, he began to write. It was heartbreaking seeing the pen tremble in his grasp as he struggled to write a single sentence. Slowly but surely, the words were etched into the page. Take care. Suddenly, my dad stopped. His face winced and curled into a pain expression as his heart monitor began to beat rapidly. "Dad, no," I begged. "Please, you can't leave me just yet. Dad, I'm begging you. Please, God, not yet." His eyes rolled over to meet mine, and a single tear crawled right down the side of his face as his heart monitor stretched out for the final rest, and the nurses filled the room once again. And that was that. Mom was gone. Dad was gone. Yet here I was, still alive and forced to endure. I took Dad's paper. I saw it as his final goodbye. Take care, Donovan. That had to have been what he was trying to say. Everything will be okay, his voice called out in my head. Leaving the hospice, I felt my shoes were like cinder blocks. The walk to the exit seemed to feel like an eternity. I got into the car, feeling empty, a void in my soul, that it couldn't be filled again. But alas, my life must go on, and funerals were to be arranged. There was a bit of shining light in the darkness, though, that shining light that came in the shape of my inheritance. It feels wrong, now that I'm thinking about it, finding consolation in getting money because my parents died, but they left it to me. It was mine. Over the course of their lives, my parents have purchased 3 properties, one here in town, a lake house a few cities over, and a 2-story townhouse back in the home state. At least I thought it was 3. Apparently they also own the cabin up in the mountains, about 50 or so miles out of town. Uh-oh, a cabin in the woods story. We already know where this one's going. Are we going to see a little book in the basement? They left each property to me, and from the very moment I found out, I made a quick decision that I was going to be definitely moving into the lake house for permanent residence. What? I deserve it. My parents died. In a way, I never even heard them mention the cabin once in my entire life. My dad would take monthly hunting trips out to that area, though I thought he was just using it to place his game and his weapons. Took me a few weeks to get out there and take a look at the place. All that was there were funeral arrangements. At the time, it would want to take to even to leave your bed after the death of a loved one. But I got out there nevertheless. Let me just say, the place was absolutely decrepit. I knew it'd been a while since my dad had gone hunting, but this place looked like it hadn't been touched in years. It was completely desolate. Vegetation started to cover the front side of the house. The boards at the back looked like they were set to collapse at any given moment. A rickety porch swing lay on the front porch, suspended on one side by the chain that hadn't snapped yet. Pushing the door open, what hit me first was the smell. The stickly sweet smell of death that you find radiating off a decaying deer carcass by the side of the road. "Oh, is dinner served already?" "Bring it upstairs, Charlie, with the room service." It ran through the front door, and a sucker punched me in the face, completely unexpectedly, covering 90% of my face with my shirt. The next thing I noticed that knocked the wind out of me were the toys. Dozens of toys that were clearly made for little boys, no older than a toddler's age. "So this is where Dad brought you," I thought aloud as I noticed my favorite teddy bears from when I was a kid. "I searched for you for months, little Huckleberry." What I noticed next is what made me realize that something was incredibly wrong. Aside from my teddy bear, I didn't recognize any of these toys. I have a pretty strong memory, and I think I'd remember at least some of the stuff, but no. I didn't recognize the clothes either. None of these 10 or so outfits by then at this point had been tattered or weathered to shreds. All just lay randomly sprawled across the floor of the cabin, covered in dirt and grime. As I explored further into the house, the smell of rot became more and more prevalent until finally I found its source. In a huge pile in the corner of the kitchen area were dozens and dozens of rodent carcasses. Possums, squirrels, raccoons. They all look like they've been completely mutilated. I stared at the disgusting pile until something hit me like a freight train. The possum at the very top of this pile looked fresh. Blood still trickled down from what looked to be a bite mark on the neck, and its feet twitched. All at once, the smell of gore became too much, and I began to get dizzy. I leaned over the sink and started puking my guts up, shivering from the force. In between my heaves, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The possum pretty much confirmed it for me. I felt my senses heighten in that raw, primal way. The kind of primal that helps a gazelle escape the crushing force of a crocodile bite before it could even happen. My ears perked up at the slightest forest sound, and the sound just so happened to be the creaking of the wooden doors of the cabin. Ever so slowly, I turned to see where the sound was coming from. Peeking its head into the doorway, staring at me with disgusting, childlike grin, was something I could barely classify as human. Its lips were elongated, and blood dripped rhythmically from his mouth and rotting teeth. It had the body of a human, but something was just so wrong. Its stomach looked like it threatened to touch its spine. It moved in jerky, erratic motions, an inch closer to me. When I was about 3 or so feet away from it, it stuck its hands out and smiled wider at me, causing me to fall backwards onto the mountain of dead animals. The thing didn't stop. It continued inching towards me, arms outstretched as if it were slowly attempting to grab me. It was now less than a foot away from me as I cowered, terrified, against the kitchen wall. It was so close that I could feel its hot, disgusting breath blanketing my entire face with each breath. Suddenly, without warning, the thing reached down violently and grabbed each of my hands. It didn't hurt me, though. Instead, it just held my hands, stroking them gently. That's when I noticed that every puzzle piece suddenly fell into place. When it looked at me, it wasn't with malice. It looked at me with the eyes that were painstakingly human. It looked at me with the same eyes that I had seen on my mother as I held her in her last moments. Just as every little detail began to register in my mind, the thing began to spoke in a broken, inhuman voice. "You'll take care of me." Well, somebody had a younger brother. Well, a younger brother. Absolutely insane, if I do say so myself. What a great, small, short story. And Alice Lovely, who has been a member of the Stock of Iron channel for 5 months, says, "Have a good show." You as well. Vox is crying battery acid. Oh, dear heavens, we have so many people that have walked in. Indeed, this started as a sad story, then it ended up being a terrifying one. Well, it looks like that poor individual had a younger brother, that the parents obviously didn't know they were there. It's good to see Valentino here, as well as Ashley Leonard. A pleasure to see you all here. Yes, Maria with tea and telly. Now, that's our... thank you. A huge gift. Thank you, my dear. I hope that you enjoyed our particular read, then. Thank you. I do remember you, Destiny 522. I have a mind like a hawk. Like a steel trap. Good to see everybody here. Radio is for pussies. Oh, here we go, Voxy. Vox, I told you, my good friend. Come on, come now. And thank you for the 3rd subscriber that we have picked up tonight. We're just piling them on. We almost have 30 people watching. Thank you very much. I suppose we should take a bit of a... I don't think I'm going to be hanging out. Unfortunately, if I do get out over there towards the VR chat side of things tonight, it will be dreadfully late. Alf is doing a show at 11:30 here, and then I have a few things that I need to work on, mainly a graphic for a friend, and a few more shorts so that we can maintain a production queue. So if I do get out to VR chat, it'll be dreadfully late. I do apologize. But I hope that you're doing well, fellow Tony, also fellow Radio Demon. It's a pleasure to see you yet again. Hello to our good friend Emma out there. Does he ever sleep? No. He doesn't sleep. He has me to deal with. Isn't that right? Right? Isn't that right, you? You have me to deal with. Anyway. But, no, he doesn't sleep. He doesn't sleep. He's constantly working on this channel. Such is his lot in life. Since he is a full-time YouTuber, and he has elected to, rely on the powers of yours truly to help expedite his progress. Thank you very much. Best answer. I suppose we should go ahead and get to our next broadcast. We're gonna hit a commercial, and then I'm gonna take a quick break from the scary story reading, and we're just gonna lighten the mood a little bit with some dad humor. That's right. Love this broadcast. Thank you very much. Radio 616, Alastor's Mystery Theater. Yes, we're going to do a couple of episodes of Radio 616 dedicated to this format of just reading some creepypastas and, because Vincent Price was one of the best radio actors of the time, alongside Orson Welles and a few others. Now, of course, radio shows require, sound effects of people walking into the house, knocking on the door, and all that stuff. So for now, we're going to just do some scary story reads until we work on a crew. I know that Sig Volleson is desperately wanting us to do some Silver Shroud content, and we are still trying to iron out the kinks with that. I shall indeed there, Valentino. I will tell him hello. The new one. Question Al, will they make more Hazbin Hotel characters go live in the future? Well, as long as there is a model, and as long as there's a voice actor that I could hire for. We do have a couple of angel dusts here, some that I've met in the VR chat community that are really, really good at what they do. And, well, let's just say the hounds have sniffed out another relatively cheap and or free angel dust VTuber model. So in the future, we may have collaborative broadcasts via StreamYard to just shoot the shit and provide even more fan has-been content for the fine folks here. Because why not? It just seems like the idea. So, as we progress in this industry, I hope that we can find more ways to keep you all entertained. The Stranger Things was good. I concur. It was good all the way up to the last few bits where they just jumped the shark. They, people jumping the shark. Let's not talk about Tom and Teddy here. If Hazbin Hotel has a final season, it'll probably deal with a Targaryen rolling into the pentagram and making tactically poor decisions, an individual gaining superpowers after saying something obvious, and a bunch of other, floundering tropes that's been happening in modern television lately. Let's be real. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, Chip, you heading to the bowling alley after school?
Oh, I can't, Rocky. I got an algebra test tomorrow. I really gotta study for.
That's a shame. The entire cheer squad's gonna be there. It's gonna be real boss.
Say, Rock, how is it that you never have to study? Back in grade school, you were dumbing in a sack of potatoes. Not to mention all the concussions you suffer playing football.
That was the old Rocky, before I discovered Mentats.
Mentats? What's that? Some kind of prep class?
Oh, Chip. You know when you got dead in one of those. No, Mentats is a drug. It makes you smarter, funnier, and comes in 4 great flavors. Here, have a taste.
Wow, I feel smart already. But isn't this wrong? Mr. Kopowski says there's no shortcuts to success.
Sounds like Mr. Kapowski didn't take his Mentats this morning, 'cause that's just about the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life.
Mentats, brains when you need it, so you can party when you don't.
If you're in need of your own personal robot, but are on a budget, head on down to Hester's Consumer Robotics. We've got Mr. Handy's from General Atomics, Security Protectrons from Robco. We've got used robots, refurbished robots, and half-finished prototypes at huge discounts. Whether you're a small business owner or an overworked housewife, Hester's has the robot for you.
I don't know. The last Mr. Handy I bought nearly took Billy's arm off.
Rest assured, ma'am, our robots have all been tested to meet our personal safety standard. We promise not a single loss of life or limb or your money back. And starting this month, we're also offering complimentary funeral arrangements with every purchase.
You mean if Billy dies, I get a full refund and you'll cover the cost of the funeral? Wow, that's amazing!
It sure is. So come on down to Hester's Consumer Robotics today for robot helpers on a budget.
Warning. System failure imminent.
I'd like to build a world and you can furnish it with love. Grow mushroom trees and atomic bees and quantum colored doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world and you can keep it company. It's the real thing, good. What the world wants today. Coca-Cola. Mushroom trees and atomic bees and quantum colored dove. It's the real thing, good. What the world wants today. Coca-Cola. I'd like to buy the world and you can keep it company.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you all didn't miss me too much. Now, I understand that there's some people here in the chat that, well, let's just read this one here, from a good friend, what are you guys? Jason Love says, these robots in the saw arms are a bunch of cut-offs. I tell you what that means, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time for a little bit of a good old Eldritch chord. Let's go ahead and bring out the veritable dad humor for you all tonight. I dare say with that, somebody has earned it. There's a common misconception that dad jokes are meant to make people laugh. This is not true. The emotion they are meant to elicit is rage, inflicting punitive damage, as it were. Oh, have we got a few pages of some fun for you. How many emo kids does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. They all just sit in the dark and cry. I have many jokes about people who are unemployed. Sadly, none of them really work. As I get older, I remember all the people I lost along the way. Maybe my budding career as a tour guide was not the right choice. Come on, you charlatans, this is hilarious. You're not completely useless. You can always be used as a bad example. I threw a boomerang a few years ago. Now I live in constant fear. Ooh. I made a website for orphans. Sadly, it still doesn't have a home page. I'm sorry and I apologize mean the same thing. Unless you're at a funeral. I guess that joke was dead on arrival, too. Oh, dear heavens me. You know, please flush, thank you. The other day, my girlfriend asked me to pass her lipstick. I accidentally passed her a glue stick, and she still isn't talking to me. What's the difference between a Lamborghini and a dead body, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I don't have a Lamborghini in my garage. What's the difference between Iron Man and Iron Woman? Well, one is a superhero, apparently a supervillain these days, and the other is but a simple command. And finally, let's bring this back home with, my mom died whenever we couldn't remember her blood type. As she died, she kept telling us to be positive, but it really is so hard without her. Thank you all for tuning into Radio 616. This has been our Dad Joke segment. There's a common misconception that dad jokes are meant to make people laugh. This is not true. The emotion they are meant to elicit is rage, inflicting punitive damage, as it were. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and cozy back up to the radio, shall we? This next terror of fear and terror is one about an individual who worked as a 911 dispatcher. Have you ever thought of the times where, you're up late at night and you actually are working in that profession? That one call? Everybody has that one call. And so, we are going to be going down a little list of a few individuals who've had a call at their 911 dispatch late at night on this next episode of Alastor's Mystery Theater. Let's go ahead and get comfortable, shall we? This is The Call. I've been a 911 dispatcher for 12 years. The last 7 on the graveyard shift. You think you've heard it all after that long. The drunks, the domestics, the panic fumbling for words about a car crash. It all comes kind of a white noise, a rhythm of human misery you learn to navigate without letting it touch you. You have to. It's the only way to stay sane. My district was a sprawling, sleepy county that dies after 10 p.m. Mostly soccer moms and retirees. The worst we usually get on a weeknight is a noise complaint or a teenager who has had too much to drink at a bonfire. The job for me has become a cycle of caffeine, fluorescent lights, and the low constant hum of computer servers. I was burned out, deeply, existentially tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. The calls were just blips on a screen, voices to be processed, categorized, and dispatched. I was a human switchboard for other people's worst days. The first call came on a Tuesday, about 3 months. It was around 2:47 a.m., the deadest hour of the deadest night. The one line lit up on my console, but not the usual way. It wasn't a cell call with a GPS ping, or a landline with a registered address. It was just a raw signal, designated as unregistered VoIP. Not of heard of, but rare. I clicked it open. 911, what's your emergency? Static. A thick, wet sound. Like listening to the radio underwater. It crackled and popped, and underneath it I could just barely make out a sound. A whisper. Hello? Can you hear me? It was a child's voice. A boy, I thought, maybe 7 or 8. He sounded like he was trying to talk without moving his lips. This is 911, I repeated, the voice a little louder, a little clearer. I can barely hear you. What is your emergency? The static swelled, almost swallowing the voice whole. He's back. The man in the mask is back. A chill, cold, and sharp went down my spine. It was a professional chill, the one that tells you that this is real, this isn't a prank. Okay, son, what are you? I need an address. Hurting mommy, the whisper came again, breaking with a sob. The static sounded like a swarm of angry insects now. Daddy's asleep on the floor. He won't wake up. Son, I need you to tell me where you are. I can't send help if I don't know where you are. My fingers were flying across the keyboard, trying to get a trace, but the system was kicking back errors. No location data, no subscriber info, nothing. The old house, he whispered, his voice fading. The end of the road. Please. Then the line went dead. Not a click, not a hang-up, it just ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the line of static and terror, and the next it was just a dead channel. Even without an address, the old house at the end of the road was enough. Out on the western edge of the county, there's a long unpaved road that just sort of peters out into the woods. At the end of it, there's one house, a big derelict Victorian thing that's been empty for as long as anyone can remember. It was a local legend. The kind of place kids stare at each other to spend a night in. I dispatched a patrol car, my senior officer, who guy's been on the force since before I was born, came back over the radio about 15 minutes later. His voice was flat, laced with the kind of annoyance reserved for rookies and time wasters. Dispatch car 12 here, property is secure, no signs of forced entry, place is boarded up tighter than a drum. There's nobody here and hasn't been for 50 years by the looks of it. 10-4, car 12, I said, my own voice betraying none of my confusion. Are you sure? The caller was a child. He said his family was being attacked. There was a sigh over the radio. He said, listen, the dust on the porch is an inch thick. The boards on the windows are gray and rotted. If someone's in there, they're a ghost. We're clearing the call. Tell whoever's playing games to knock it off. I logged in as unfounded and tried to put it out of my mind. A prank, a sophisticated one, maybe. Using some kind of voice changer and a VoIP spoofer. Kids these days. I was too tired to care. A week later, at 2:47 a.m., the same line lit up. The same static. The same terrified whispering voice. He's in the house. I can hear him walking. This time I felt a knot of ice form in my stomach. Son, is this some caller? Is this the same caller from last week? A choked sob. He has the mask on, the one with the scary smile. Mommy screaming. Faintly through the storm of static, I thought I could hear it. A woman's scream, high and thin and distorted, like a sound being played backwards. I'm sending help, I said, my voice tight. Stay on the line. With me? Can you hide? In the closet, he whispered. He's coming up the stairs. I can hear his feet. The line went dead. I dispatched 2 cars this time. I told him it was a repeat call. Possibly a hostage situation. I didn't want them to be complacent. They took it seriously. They set up a perimeter. They used a bullhorn. They broke down the front door. The result was the same. An empty house, thick undisturbed layers of dust on every surface, rotted floorboards, peeling wallpaper, the smell of decay and forgotten things. No footprints, no child, no man in a mask, no sign of a human being had set foot in that house in decades. My supervisor pulled me aside the next morning. He's a large, patient man who had a weary look of someone who's seen it all twice. He told me to drop it. It's a glitch, he said, not meeting my eye. Some kind of cross-chatter from another jurisdiction. A recurring electronic echo. Don't waste county resources on it. That call comes in again. Log it, and move on. But I couldn't. The boy's voice, it was too real. The terror in it was primal. You can't fake that. Not even the best actor in the world can fake a sound of a child who thinks their mother's being murdered in the next fucking room. The calls kept coming every Tuesday like clockwork. 2:47 a.m. Each call was slightly different piece, slightly horrible puzzle. He's hurting Daddy now. There's so much red. Mommy stopped screaming. He's looking for me. I can hear him opening the doors. Every time I sent a car, every time the result was the same. The cops got angrier. I was the boy who cried wolf. My supervisor gave me a formal warning. My colleagues started looking at me funny, whispering when I walked by. They thought I was cracking up, and maybe I was. I started losing sleep. On my nights off, I'd find myself staring at the clock. My heart pounding as 2:47 approached. The silence somehow was worse than the calls. I became obsessed during the day instead of sleeping. I went out to the county records office. I needed to know who owned that house. The paper trail was a mess. It had been sold and resold, owned by banks and holding companies, but I kept digging backwards through dusty ledgers and brittle property deeds, and finally I found it. The last family to actually live there. A deed from 1968. A nice, happy family with a mom, a dad, 2 kids. A boy and a girl. That wasn't enough. I started spending my days in the library's basement, scrolling through decades of local newspapers on a squeaky ancient microfiche reader. The stale, papery smell of the archives filled my lungs. It was like I was looking for anything related to the house, the family, for weeks, and I found still nothing. Just property tax notices and school honor roll calls. Then I found it. The article from a cold, late autumn day in 1975. The headline was stark. Local family slain in apparent home invasion. This is getting good. This is beginning to give me some of those chills. Hope you all are still staying tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Nix, welcome to Stella, welcome to Lennox. I see you all here. I am indeed reading a scary story for you all's entertainment, and I hope that you are finding it soothing as well as terrifying. Let's go ahead and get back to it, shall we? My blood ran cold. I zoomed in, my hands trembling as I adjusted the focus knob. The picture was grainy, black and white. It was the house. The same steep gables, the same white porch. Police cars were parked haphazardly on the overgrown lawn. I read the article, my heart hammering away against my ribs. A husband, a wife, and their 10-year-old daughter found dead in their home. Cause of death was extensive. The article was vague, using phrases like brute force trauma, and the police report mentioned a possible intruder, a figure, a neighbor that had been seen fleeing into the woods, described only as a tall man wearing some kind of pale, expressionless mask. The last paragraph is what made me stop breathing. The family's 8-year-old son, it read, remains missing. Police found evidence he was hiding in the upstairs closet during the attack, but the boy has not been found. Statewide search is underway. Authorities have not ruled out the possibility he was abducted by the assailant. The crime was never solved. A cold case. A masked man was never found, and a little boy was never seen again. I sat back in my chair, the library basement suddenly feeling like a tomb. The static, the whispers, the closet. The man in the mask. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a glitch. It's like listening to a ghost. The next day at work, I felt broken. I walked into the dispatch center like a zombie. The hum of the service sounded like a funeral dirge. I couldn't keep it anymore. I had to tell someone. I grabbed my supervisor and one of the oldest dispatchers, a woman who had been there for 30 years, and dragged them into the break room. I laid it all out, the calls, the timing, the empty house, the microfiche article. I showed them the copy I'd printed out, the grainy picture of the house, the headline. I expected them to think I was insane. I expected them to tell me to take a leave of absence. They didn't. They just looked at each other. It was a look like I've never seen before, that of grim, tired resignation. The supervisor sighed, a heavy rattling sound, and rubbed his temples. The older dispatcher, she just stared at the article, her face pale. So it started again, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean, started again? I asked, my voice shaking. What's going on? My supervisor sat down heavily. Kid, he said. He looked 100 years old. We need to tell you about the man you replaced. He told me the story. A dispatcher who had my seat before me. He'd been a good man, sharp, dedicated. About a year before I was hired, he started getting strange. He was obsessed with a specific address, the old house at the end of the road. He kept sending cars out there, insisting there was a child in trouble. The patrols came back empty. He started pulling out old files, spending his days off the library. He became withdrawn, paranoid. He claimed that the calls were getting no one else could ever hear. We checked the logs, my supervisor said, his voice low and serious. The system never registered the calls he said he was taking. He pulled the audio recorders for his console. There was nothing on them but dead air. We thought he was having a breakdown, stress of the job. My blood turned ice water. The system, it doesn't log the calls for me either. They just show up on the screen and disappear. They don't go into the call history. The old dispatcher nodded slowly. We know, it's the same. He told us about the calls and what they were about. A little boy and a man in a mask. I thought I was going to be sick. Well, what happened to him? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. One night, the supervisor continued, his eyes fixated on the linoleum floor. He took the call. We saw him on the console, talking, his face ashen. He was typing a report and then he just stopped. He stood up, he grabbed his jacket and keys, and walked out without a word. The call was still active on the screen, but none of us could hear anything on it. We just saw the open line. Well, where did he go? He drove out to the house. His car was found parked on the road the next morning. Engine was cold, doors were locked, he was gone. The silence in the room was absolute. We searched, the old dispatcher said, her voice cracking. The police did a grid search of the entire woods, dogs, helicopters, whole nine. They went through the house from the attic to the cellar, and they found nothing. No sign of a struggle, no footprints, no him. He just vanished, wiped off the face of the earth. I stared at them, my mind struggling to process where they could be. Well, why did you warn me? I stammered. How could we? My supervisor shot back, his voice rising with frustration that had clearly been festering for years. Hey, new guy, welcome aboard. By the way, the console might be haunted. The last guy that sat here disappeared. Don't worry about it. You have thought we were crazy. You thought he was crazy until you came in here today with the same damn story. He leaned forward, eyes locking onto mine. This is what you're going to do. The next time that line rings, you do not answer it. If you answer it by mistake, you hang up immediately. You do not talk to him, you do not engage, you do not terminate the call, and you clear the line. That's an order. Do you understand me? For the next few weeks, I was a ghost myself. I did my job on autopilot. Every sound, every flicker on the screen made me jump. The dreaded Tuesday nights, I drank so much coffee I could feel my heart rattling in my chest, just to stay sharp, to stay vigilant. I thought about quitting. I thought about just walking out and never coming back. But where would I go? Then last night it happened. It was 2:45 a.m. I was staring at the clock, my knuckles white from gripping the edge of my desk. The minutes ticked like hours. 2:46. My mouth was dry. My heart was a drum solo in my ears at 2:47. The line lit up. The unregistered VOIP. Felt like a physical blow. I flinched back in my chair. My training, my instincts, every fiber of my being screamed at me to answer it. There was a child in trouble. That was the job. But I remembered the pale, haunted face of my supervisor. The story of the man had vanished. You terminate the call. I let it ring once, twice. The flashing light on the console seemed to sear my retinas. My hand hovered over the button, trembling. I couldn't just ignore it. I had to answer it. I had to. I clicked the button. 911, what is your... The static was clear, louder than it had ever been. There was a physical presence in my ear, a wall of noise. And the boy's face came. It wasn't whispering this time, but screaming. It was raw, ragged, a sound of pure agony and terror. He's got me, please, he's taking me. Sir, don't let him take me, help me. The sound ripped through my professional detachment and tore right into my soul. This was it, the climax, the moment that the boy was taken. Replaying for all eternity, my hand flew to the keyboard to dispatch a card, a purely reflexive action, 40 years of training. But I stopped. My fingers froze over the keys. He's gone. This already happened. He's not real. The boy was sobbing now, his screams turning into choked, gasping pleas. Please, you promised you'd send help. Please, don't leave me. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I was a 911 dispatcher. My job was to send help. I was going to sit there and listen to a child be abducted or murdered and do nothing. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice sick. I'm so very sorry. I reached for the terminate button on my screen. My finger was a millimeter from the glass. This was it. I was choosing to save myself. I was choosing to let him go. And then the screaming stopped. It wasn't a fade-out. It was an abrupt cut, as if the switch had been flipped. The roar of the static dropped to a low, sinister hum. The line was still open. Silence. My heart was in my throat. Did I do it? And then a new sound came through the headset. It wasn't the boy. It was a man's voice. A whisper, just as terrified as a child had been, but older, hoarser, distorted by the same underwater static. The same swarm of electronic insects. It was a voice trying to push its way through an impossible distance, though time itself. The voice I felt deep in my bones, I should have recognized from an old staff photo in the hallway. The whisper was faint, but utterly and terrifyingly clear. He's here. I froze, my finger hovering over the screen. The voice was ragged, desperate, and broken. He sees you. Through the line, he's looking at you. Cold dread, so absolute and profound, it felt like death itself washed over me. I slowly, involuntarily looked up from my console, across the darkened dispatch center, towards the plate glass windows that looked out into the night. There was nothing there but the reflection of my own terrified glass in the if I could talk today. My own terrified face in the glass, my skin pale in the glow of the monitors. The whispering in my ear continued. A final chilling plea from the place beyond hope. Please, get me out of here. Rye Fox Demon, a pleasure to see you. Brittany Hines, hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see Cosmic Sprout out there as well. Thank you all for enjoying Radio 616 AM modulation. A stupid form proofreading. So, of course I'm going to make buzzing noises. It's a pleasure, it's a pleasure. I hope that you all are enjoying the content, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to Radio 616 as we are doing some scary story reading. Thank you for your subscriptions. Where are we at now? Are we still pulling in subscribers off of this? Holy guacamole, you guys are fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's just see where we're chilling at now. Just for the curiosity's sake, if nothing else. We are currently sitting at 3,337 subscribers. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. You want to give me makeup? What, to sell? We'll sell it. I'm sure we can get a pretty good dollar out of it if it's good makeup. Hello, Charlie. Hopefully life is finding you well this evening. DoorDash, I'm hungry. We're probably going to be doing one more scary story reading before we start wrapping this up in a nice, neat bow. And I want to once again thank you all again from the bottom of my heart. This has been a wonderful program so far, an absolutely wonderful program, and we're gonna be doing more of these. I do believe. Yes, my eye is twitching because I'm scratching it. No, you can't see what it's like having to claw your eye out. One more scary story, and it's going to be a classic. It's going to be an Edgar Allan Poe read, The Pit and the Pendulum. And greetings to Anti-Derivative Jill. Here to Marvel in the airwaves, I certainly hope so. We are doing a bit of a scary story reading marathon. We're paying homage to Vincent Price and Mystery Theater, the old horror ages of old. And it is once again a resounding success. I believe we have found the ore vein that we are going to be drilling here with the Stock of Iron YouTube channel for the foreseeable future. I do remember you, and Vox remembers you prior to that. A pleasure to meet you too, my friend. Welcome to tonight's program. And of course, as we get new subscribers, the great Casey's Creepy Creations is deciding it's time to put them all in green sleeves. Who are we getting added to our legions of new Shield agents tonight? We have Inked and Beautiful. Welcome! You're a brand new subscriber, now you're a brand new member. We have Baku Rocks U4D, that's you too. Jeff B, 2607, Anthony Talentino, The Comic Relief Crusader, Kizume, Cool Frog, Collie Hound, Real Pie, and Justice Hopper. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the green sleeves. Oh dear, excuse me. What a wonderful way to continue our program. I guess what really makes this channel now stand out is we have taken our desire to be your source of entertainment to the fullest. There are shows out there that will complain about the same old thing. They'll complain about Disney. They'll complain about Paramount. They'll talk about the same rumor mills. They'll grind up the peppercorns into the shakers and much, much more. If you want to listen to a bunch of old men talk about the same topics, well, you can go there. We here are going to be the solution to the loss that we have in pop culture by becoming the new pop culture here at the Stock of Iron show. Yes, indeed, that Saturday show, Jill, is only due to formality because of networking issues. If I had it my way, I would tell that idiot to just cancel it, but there is an audience for that too. The whole point is we're trying to cater to any and all audiences to be the future of your entertainment, and at the very least, your news coverage. Hello, Venus, welcome, welcome. The monkey's paw next time, we could. We absolutely could. The soul stairs. Well, I tried to notice everyone. I understand that as the chats grow more and more, you like my Alastor morph, my Mighty Morphin Alastor Rangers morph? That morph? How about that one? But yes. Where's Niven? Welcome to Ali. I only just joined, so what do you do on the channel? Says Jodie Foster. We are a character entertainer empire. We have a motley assembly of impersonations, excluding not just a Has Been Hotel, but in fact we're going to be doing a puppet show later tonight. It's a bit more on the mature side, and it may not be for everyone's taste, but we do cater for fans of Alf, a.k.a. Gordon Shumway. We'll be doing that one at 11:30. It's a totally different format. We'll have a few other puppets on the show. It'll happen right after Taco Tuesday on the Cotton Council. And let's see here. What else? We have a variety show where we do basically a featurette of all of the characters that are in our impersonators ensemble. Petty songwriting, just general chicanery and fun that we have on Thursday called Stock's Thursday Matinee. Our flagship show. We do cover pop culture and gaming news for a couple of hours on Saturdays called the Stockcast. It's also a bit different, less zany, less fun like these do. And, of course, let's see, I think that's really about it. We do have karaoke's on Rumble just to avoid the copyright goblins, because Lord knows we can all avoid the copyright goblins, am I right? And, yes, and much, much more. So, feel free to stay tuned. We will have more Has-Been content, but we'll also have more Gravity Falls content, TMNT content, Transformers content. You'll find that the person who has his hand proverbially up my ass has 92 other character voice impersonations living rent-free in his head. So you'll never know what to expect on this channel. Yes, that one. That Bill cipher, yes, as well as a couple of other Alex Hurst palette. We go back as far as Transformers, Beavis and Butthead, G.I. Joe. We go up as brand new as Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. We are going to constantly expand into more and more fandoms and treat the characters with the same amount of respect that a lot of these big wigs in Hollywood do for their own IPs that we really wish that we would let them do. So we are going to be the solution rather than just sit around, complain, put yourself in front of a camera and be relatively boring. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we have found our vein and we are gonna drill. Now, I suppose, before we get to our final story, which is a classic Edgar Allan Poe piece, The Pit and the Pendulum, that will bring out a few more dad jokes for you all, just so that we can have some fun. But then, of course, the mortal behind me is literally giving me the eyes, going, I need to eat, Al, please, Al, I need this. I'm starving and I would like to have lunch. Take your time. Let's go ahead and have a little bit more fun with some dad humor. There's a common misconception that dad jokes are meant to make people laugh. This is not true. The emotion they are meant to elicit is rage, inflicting punitive damage, as it were. Oh, dear heavens me, here we go again. Well, you all saw this was coming. The true terror of tonight's proceedings. Oh, will you stop that? Bunch of charlatans, Philistines, the lot of you, Philistines. You wouldn't know good comedy if it hit you in the face. So how do you surprise a blind guy? Well, you put a plunger in the toilet. I just burned 2,500 calories in 20 minutes. It's because I forgot to take the brownies out of the oven. You know, male bees die after mating. That's basically their whole life. You know, honey, nut, Cheerio. My wife gave me a long explanation about mansplaining. I guess I could call it she-laborating. That's what I like to hear. This is the best channel I've ever found. Be sure to stick with us. We're only going to be getting better. I told my daughter she was named after Britney Spears, and she asked why. I told her, well, you weren't born before her. Why should you not brush your teeth with your left hand? Well, a toothbrush just works better. I mean, it's just common sense. Nothing at all, nothing. Ah, yes, cannibals aren't picky when it comes to eating people in the military, but they do prefer seasoned veterans. Oh, dear heavens me. Nothing. You know, my Korean friend died last week. So young. My wife divorced me when she found out I only had 9 toes. She's lactose intolerant. What do you call it when Optimus Prime gets a hand job? A carjacking! And finally, let's go ahead and round this one up in a nice neat bow, shall we? My wife and I took a 1,000-mile road trip to see our family. My uncle asked us if we took turns driving on the way up. I replied, yeah, it was too hard to get here in a straight line. It is an absolute pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you all continue to enjoy our Radio 616 radio broadcasts. I feel like we should just do these every Tuesdays. We're going to have to find another DEFCON 4 reward on Stocks Thursday matinee. These have ended up becoming a hell of a lot of fun. Now, this is the kind of entertainment that I will give you guaranteed. We own the future here at the Stock of Iron channel. I'll put the old in with the new. I know it's ironic for a folk like me to say that, but what can I say? This has been your dad joke segment of the evening. Let's get back to our final scary story, ladies and gentlemen. And we appreciate everybody's support tonight. All right, then. Now, this particular number merits no introduction. But when I was still alive, my mother would read me stories by Edgar Allan Poe when I was a child, because they were passed down. They were relatively new, believe it or not, as I was born in the year of our Lord 1983, or 1883. Yes, relatively new stories at the time. And she would always make sure that she would save her pennies and be able to get the next book that would come out at our local store in rural Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans. That's right. I'm a Louisiana boy, like my crawdads, like my jambalaya. Cha-cha-cha, rise, rise, rise. But I digress. I suppose it's about time that we get to this particular story. And this is one that I've not orated yet. If you go back to some of my older content, we have covered the Telltale Heart, the Black Cat, the Raven on multiple accounts. The Cask of Amontillado, which is still to date Sean Carter's favorite oration, and many, many more. Now, without further fanfare, thank you all for subscribing to the Stock of Iron YouTube channel. As much as Vox loves me to say this, trust us with your entertainment. We are 2 subscribers away from 3340. Can we get to 3340 tonight? I think we can. Keep sharing this bad boy out, especially to your fans at Hasbin Hotel. Quoted, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the #1 most in-demand show and fandom of 2025. It's almost a science, as it were. Where were we? Ah, yes. The Pit and the Pendulum. I was sick. Sick unto death with that long agony. And then they at length unbound me, and I was permitted to sit. I felt that my senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, was the last of distinct accentuation that reached my ears. After that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed merged in my one dreamy intermittent hum. It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution, perhaps from its association in fancy with the burr of a mill wheel. This only for a brief period, for presently I heard no more, yet for a while I saw, but without terrible an exaggeration, I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me white, whiter than the sheet upon which I traced these words, and thin even into grotesqueness, thin with the intensity of the expression of their firmness, of immovable resolution, of stern contempt of human torture. I saw the decree of what to me was fate, still issuing from those lips. I saw them writhe with a deadly locution. I saw them fashion the syllables of my name, and I shuddered because no sound succeeded. I saw, too, for the few moments of delirious humor, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable draperies which enwrapped the walls of the apartment. And then my vision fell upon 7 tall candles upon the table. At first they wore the aspect of charity. It seemed white and slender angels would have saved me, but then all at once there came the most deadly nausea over my spirit. I felt every fiber in my frame thrill as if it had been touched the wire of galvanic battery, while the angel forms became meaningless specters with heads of flame. I saw that from there would be no help, and then they stole into my fancy like a rich musical note, the thought of what sweet rest there must be in the grave, the thought that came gently and stealthily, and it seemed long before it attained full appreciation. But just as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished, as if magically from before me. The tall candles sank into nothingness. Their flames went out utterly. The blackness of darkness supervened. All sensations appeared swallowed up in a mild rushing descent of the soul into Hades. And then silence, stillness, and the night were the universe. I had swooned. Still, I will not say that of all the consciousness was lost. What of it there remained I will not attempt to define, or even describe, yet all was not lost in the deepest slumber, no, in delirium, no, in a swoon, no, in death, no. Even in the grave all is not lost, else there is no immortality for man. Arousing from the most profound of slumbers, we break the gossamer web of some dream, yet in a second afterwards, so frail that the web may have been, we remember that we have dreamed. In the return to life from a swoon, there were 2 stages. First was the sense of mental or spiritual. Secondly was the sense of the physical existence. It seemed probable, if that upon reaching the second stage, we should recall the impressions of the first. We should find these impressions eloquent, the memories of the gulf beyond. And the gulf is what? How, at last, shall we distinguish in shadows from those of the tomb? What are the impressions of what I have termed the first stage, are all not what were called yet? After the long interval, do they not come unbidden? While we marvel whence they came, he who has never swooned is not he who finds strange palaces and wildly familiar faces in coals that glow. Is he who not beholds floating in mid-air the sad visions of the many, many not view. It is he who ponders over the perfume of some novel flower. Is not he whose brain goes bewildered in the meaning of some musical cadence in which has never before arrested his attention. Amid the frequent and thoughtful endeavors to remember, amid earnest struggles to regather some token of the state of seeming nothingness into which my soul has lapsed, there have been moments when I have dreamed of success. There have been brief, very brief periods which I've conjured up remembrances within the lucid reason of later epoch assures me could have referenced only the condition of seeming unconsciousness. These memories and shadows do tell indistinctly of the tall figures that lifted and bore me in silence, down, still down, till a hideous dizziness oppressed me at the mere idea of the interminableness of the descent. They also tell of a vague horror at my heart on account of the heart's unnatural stillness. Then comes the sense of the sudden motionlessness throughout all things, as if those who bore me, a ghastly train, had outrun in their descent the limits of the limitless, had paused from the wearisomeness of the toll. After this I called the mind flatness and dampness, and all this madness, the madness of the memory which busies itself among the forbidden things. Very suddenly there came back to my soul motion and sound, the tumultuous motion of the heart, and in my ears the sound of its beating. Then at a pause, which is all is blank, and then again a sound, a motion, and touch. A tingling sensation pervading my frame, the mere consciousness of existence without thought, a condition which lasted long, then very, very suddenly thought in shuddering terror, earnest endeavor to comprehend my true state. And then a strong desire to lapse into insensibility. Then a rushing revival of a soul and successful effort to move, and now a full memory of the trial, of the judges, of the sable draperies of the sentence, of the sickness of the swoon, the entire forgetfulness of all that followed, of all the later day much earnestness of endeavor have enabled me so vaguely to recall. So far, I had not opened my eyes. I felt that I lay upon my back unbound. I reached out my hand and felt heavily upon something damp and hard. There I suffered to remain for many minutes, where I strove to imagine where and what I could be. I longed, yet dared not to employ my vision. I dreaded the first glance of the objects around me. It was not that I had feared to look upon things horrible, but I grew aghast lest there be nothing to see. At length, with a wild desperation in my heart, I quickly unclosed my eyes. My worst thoughts then were confirmed. The blackness of eternal night encompassed me. I struggled for breath. The intensity of darkness seemed to oppress and stifle me. The atmosphere was intolerably close. I still lay quietly and made effort to exercise my reason. I brought mind of these inquisitorial proceedings and attempted at that point to deduce my real condition. The sentence had passed. It appeared to me that a very long interval of time had since elapsed, and yet not for a moment did I suppose myself actually dead. Such a supposition, notwithstanding, is what we need in fiction, is altogether inconsistent with real existence. But where and in what state was I? The condemned to death I knew perished usually in the autos da fe, was in one of those that have held the very night of the other day of my trial. Had I been remanded to my dungeon, and await the next sacrifice, which would not take place for many months, this I once had saw would not be. Victims had been in immediate demand. Moreover, my dungeon, as well as those condemned in the cells at Toledo, had stone floors, and light was not all other excluded. The fearful idea now suddenly drove the blood torrents upon my heart, and for a brief period I once more relapsed into insensibility. Upon recovering, I at once started on my feet, trembling convulsively in every fibre. I thrust my arms wildly above and around me in all directions. I felt nothing, yet dreaded to move a step, lest I should be impeded by the walls of a tomb. Perspiration burst from every pore, and stood in cold big beads upon my forehead. The agony of suspense grew at length intolerable, and I cautiously moved forward with my arms extended, and my eyes straining from their sockets, in the hope of catching some faint ray of light. I proceeded for many paces, but still all was blackness and vacancy. I breathed more freely, seemed evident. It was mine was not at least the most hideous of fates. And now, as I still continued to step cautiously forward, there came thronging upon my recollection 1,000 vague rumors of the horrors of Toledo. One of the dungeons there had been strange things narrated, fables I had always deemed them, but yet strange and too ghastly to repeat save in a whisper. Was I left to perish of starvation in the subterranean world of darkness, or what fate, perhaps even more fearful, awaited me? That the result of death, and a death of more of a customary bitterness, knew too well a character the judges to doubt. The mode and the hour were all that occupied and distracted me. What a lovely story. Why, hello, Brandon, the anime guy. Indeed, indeed. Who hasn't been insensible now and then, says anti-derivative Jill. Well, this is a man that has been condemned to death. obviously. Obviously he's been condemned to death. And it's good to see everybody here. This is a very morose story, and it's so good to see Spidey channel. Welcome back. Tim Olsen, no! Tim Olsen, yes. I, and alongside Voxy Poo, have brought almost 400 new subscribers to the channel. We're drilling the vein. 'Tis what it is. And indeed, I do follow the Bosco impersonation more than the Talai. I do make sure that my radio demon is a bit more, yes, quite. It's good to see everybody here tonight. This chat is flying by. Thank you all for your support, for hanging out here. Thank you for sharing the show. Absolutely wonderful evening. Oh, we're far from done. This is The Pit and the Pendulum. It's about a 45-minute long read. And speaking of which, we should get back to it, shall we? My outstretched hands at length encountered some solid obstruction. It was a wall, seemingly of stone masonry, very smooth, slimy, and cold. I followed up, stepping with all the careful distrust of what a certain antique narratives have inspired me. This process, however, afforded me no means of ascertaining the dimensions of my dungeon, as I might make its circuit and return to the point in which I set out. Without being aware of the fact so perfectly uniform seemed the wall, I therefore sought the knife which had been in my pocket, which led into the inquisitorial chamber, but it was gone. My clothes had been exchanged for a wrapper of coarse serge. I had thought of the forcing of my blade for some minute crevice out of the masonry, and so as to identify my point of departure. The difficulty, nevertheless, was trivial, although, in the disorder of my fancy, it seemed at first insuperable. I tore a part of the hem from the robe, and placed the fragment at full length, at right angles to the wall, in groping the way about the prison. I could not fail to encounter this rag upon completing the circuit, and so at least I thought, but I had not counted upon the extent of the dungeon, or upon my own weakness. The ground was moist and slippery. I staggered onward for some time, when I stumbled and fell. My excessive fatigue induced me to remain prostrate, and my sleep soon took over me as I lay. Upon awakening, and stretching forth an arm, I found beside me a loaf and a pitcher with water. It was much exhausted effort to reflect upon this circumstance, but I ate and drank with avidity. Shortly afterward, I resumed my tour upon the prison, which the toil came at last at the fragment of the surge. Up to the point, I felt I had counted 52 paces, and upon resuming my walk, I had counted 48 more. When I arrived to the rag, it all was in then 100 paces, and admitting 2 paces to the yard. I presumed the dungeon to be 50 yards in circuit. I had met, however, with many angles of the wall, and thus I could form no guess at the shape of the vault, for a vault I could not help supposing it to be. I had little object, certainly no hope in these researches, but a vague curiosity prompted me to continue them. Quitting the wall, I resolved to cross the area of the enclosure. At first proceeded with extreme caution, for the floor, although seemingly of solid material, was treacherous with slime. At length, however, I took courage, did not hesitate to step firmly, endeavoring to cross a direct line as possible. I advanced some 10 or 12 paces in this manner, with the remnant of the torn hem of my robe becoming entangled between my legs. I stepped on it, and fell violently on the face. The confusion attending my fall did not immediately apprehend somewhat startling circumstance, which yet, a few seconds afterwards, I still lay prostrate, arrested my attention. It was this: my chin rested upon the floor of the prison, but my lips and the upper portion of my head, although seemingly at less elevation than the chin, touched nothing. At the same time, my forehead had seemed to bathe in a clammy vapor. The peculiar smell of decayed fungus arose from my nostrils. I put forward my arm, and shuddered to find that I had fallen at the brink of the circular pit, who at this extent had no means of ascertaining the moment. Groping about the masonry just below the margin, I succeeded in dislodging a small fragment, and let it fall into the abyss. For many seconds I hearkened to its reverberations, as it dashed upon the sides of the chasm in its descent. At length there was a sudden plunge into water, succeeded by loud echoes. At the same moment there was a sound resembling a quick opening, as rapid, closing the door overhead, with a faint gleam of light flashed suddenly through the gloom, and was suddenly faded away. I saw clearly the doom which had been prepared to me, and congratulated myself upon the timely accident by which I had escaped. Another step before my fall, and the world would have been no more for me, and death was just avoided. The very character in which I had regarded as fabulous and frivolous, in tales respecting the Inquisition, the victims of its tyranny, There was a choice of death with its direct physical agonies, or death with its most hideous moral horrors. I had been reserved for the latter. By long suffering my nerves, I have been unstrung until I trembled at the sound of my own voice, and it became in very respect a fitting subject for the species, the torture that awaited me. Shaking in every limb, I groped my way back to the wall, resolving that to perish now rather than risk the terrors of the wells, for which my imagination now pictured me in various positions about the dungeon. In other conditions of mind, I might have been the courage to end my misery as I plunged into one of these abysses. But for now, I was in the veriest of cowards. Neither would I ever, or knew ever, would I have read of these pits, of this sudden extinction of life, that formed no part of this most horrible and devious plan. Indeed, slime on bricks is absolutely vile and scary, especially in the middle of the dark. Have a great night, Jody. Take care of yourself. Agitation of spirit kept me awake for many long hours, but at length I again slumbered. Upon arousing, I found my side as before, a loaf and a pitcher of water. Burning thirst consumed me, and I emptied the vessel at a draught. It must have been drugged, for scarcely had I drunk before I became irresistibly drowsy. A deep sleep fell upon me, a sleep like that of death. How long it lasted, of course, I know not, but when once again I unclosed my eyes, the objects around me were visible by a wild sulphurous luster, the origin of which I could not at first determine, but I was enabled to see the extent, the aspect of the prison. In its size I had been greatly mistaken. The whole circuit of its walls did not exceed 25 yards. For some minutes the fact occasioned me a world of vain trouble, vain indeed, for what could have been of less importance under terrible circumstances which environed me. There were more dimensions in my dungeon, but my soul took the wild interest in trifles as I busied myself to the endeavors to account for the error that I had committed of my measurement. And the truth at length flashed upon me. In my first attempt at exploration I had counted 52 paces, upon which period I fell. It must have been within a pace or two of the fragment of search. In fact, I nearly performed the circuit of the vault, and then slept, and upon awakening I had returned upon my steps, opposing the circuit nearly double, which it actually was. My confusion of mind prevented me from observing that I began my tour with the wall to the left, but ended with the wall on the right. I had been deceived, too, in respect to the shape of the enclosure, in feeling my way that had found many angles, and thus deduced the idea of great irregularity. So potent is the effect of total darkness upon one arousing from the lethargy of sleep. The angles that simply chose those few slight depressions or niches at odd intervals. The general shape of the prison was square. What I had taken for masonry seemed to be now iron, or some other metal, and some huge plates whose sutures or joints occasioned the depression. The entire surface of this metallic enclosure rudely daubed in all but the hideous and repulsive devices in which the charnel superstition of the monks had given rise. The figures of fiends and aspects of menace, with skeleton forms, and others really fearful images, overspread and disfigured the walls. I observed the outlines of these monstrosities, which were sufficiently distinct, but that the colors seemed faded or blurred, as if some of the effects of the damp atmosphere. I now noticed the floor, too, which was of stone, and in the center yawned a circular pit, from whose jaws I had escaped, but that was only one in the dungeon. All this I saw indistinctly and with much effort, for my personal condition I had been greatly changed during slumber. I now lay upon my back at full length on a species of low framework of wood. To this I was securely bound by a long strap resembling a signal. It passed to my convolutions about my limbs and body, leaving at liberty only my head and my left arm, to such extent that I could by dint of much exertion supply myself with food and the earthen dish which lay by my side of the floor. I saw to my horror that the pitcher had been removed. I say to my horror, for which I was consumed with intolerable thirst, the thirst that appeared to be the design by my persecutors to stimulate, for the food in the dish was meat pungently seasoned. Looking forward, I surveyed the ceiling of my prison. It was some 30 or 40 feet overhead, constructed as much as the side walls, in which the panels of the very singular figure riveted my whole attention. It was a painted figure of Time, as he commonly respected, save that in lieu of a scythe. He held what at a casual glance I supposed to be pictured the image of a huge pendulum, such as we would see antique clocks. There was something, however, in the appearance of this machine which had caused me much regard, and more attentively. I gazed directly athwart at it, for its position was immediately over my own. I fancied that I saw it in motion, and an instant afterward the fancy was confirmed. The sweep was brief, and of course slow, and I watched it for some minutes, somewhat in fear, but more in wonder wearied at length. With the observing its dull moment, I turned my eyes upon the other objects in the cell. A slight noise attracted my notice, and then looking to the floor, I saw several enormous rats traversing it. They had issued from the wall, which lay just within the view to my right. Even then, while I gazed, they came up in troops, hurriedly, with ravenous eyes, alert from the scent of the meat. From this was required much effort and attention to scare them away. It might have seemed half an hour, or perhaps an hour, for what could I take the imperfect note of time? Before again I cast my eyes upward, and then I saw what confounded and amazed me. The sweep of the pendulum had increased in extent by nearly a yard, and as a natural consequence its velocity was also much greater. What mainly disturbed me was the fact that it had perceptibly descended. I now observed, with what horror is needless to say, that neither extremity was formed from a crescent of guttering steel, and about a foot in length from horn to horn, the horns upward, the under edge evidently as keen as that of a razor. Like a razor also, it seemed messy and heavy, tapering from the edge into a solid and broad structure above. It appeared to be weighty, wrought of brass, and the whole hissed of it as it swung through the air. I could no longer doubt the doom that prepared me by the monkish ingenuity of my torture. My cognizance of the pit had been known to the inquisitorial agents, the pit whose horrors have been destined for so bold a recusant such as myself. The pit typical of hell, and regarded by the rumor as ultimate fuel in all their punishments. The plunge into this pit I had avoided by the merest of accidents. I knew that surprise or entrapment into torment formed an important portion of all the grotesquerie of these dungeon deaths. Having failed to fall, there was no part of the demon plan to hurl me into the abyss, and thus, there being no alternative, a different and milder destruction awaited me. Milder! I smiled in my agony as I thought of such application of the term. What boots it tell of the long, long hours of horror, more than mortal, during which, counted by the rushing vibrations of the steel, inch by inch, line by line, with the descent only appreciable at intervals that seemed ages, down and still down it came. Days passed, and might have been that many days that passed, and it swept so closely over me as to fan me with its acrid breath. The odor of the shop steel forced itself into my nostrils. I prayed. I wearied heaven with my prayer with a more speedy descent. I grew frantically mad as I struggled to force myself upward against the sweep of the fearful scimitar. But then as I fell suddenly calm, I lay smiling at the glittering death, as a child at some rare bauble. There was another interval of utter insensibility. It was brief again, lapsing into life there, and no perceptible descent into the pendulum. There might have been long, for I knew that there were demons who took note of my swoon. To those who have arrested the vibration of pleasure, upon my recovery too I felt very, inexpressibly sick and weak, as though I longed in an nation. Even amid the agonies of this period, the human nature craved food, and with painful effort I outstretched my left arm as far as my hands permitted, and took possession of the small remnant which had been spared me by the rats. I put the portion with my lips, there rushed into my mind, half formed the thought of day, of hope. Yet what business had I with hope? Was it to say I have formed the thought? Man has so many such which are never completed. I felt it was that of joy, of hope, but also felt that it had perished into the formation. In vain I struggled to perfect, to regain it. Long suffering had nearly been annihilated. In all my ordinary powers and mine, I was an imbecile, an idiot. Me not hearing this while doing the dishes. Welcome, Daxonar, welcome, welcome. I hope that everyone is enjoying it. It's about time to go ahead and see this man get bisected, as it were. Yes, the bees! They're in my eyes! My eyes! Oh. begin. Let's continue. The vibration of the pendulum was right angles to my length. I saw that the crescent was designed to cross the region of the heart. It would fray from the surge of my robe. It would return and repeat its operations again and again. Notwithstanding terrifyingly wide sweep, some 30 feet or more, and the hissing vigor of its descent, sufficient to sunder the very walls of iron, still fraying of my robe would all be that for several minutes. It would accomplish. At this thought I passed. I dared not go up further in this reflection. I dwelt upon it with a pertinacity of attention, as if in so dwelling I could arrest here the descent of the steel. I forced myself to ponder upon the sound of the crescent as soon as it passed across the garment, upon the peculiar thrilling sensation which the friction of cloth produces on the nerves. I pondered upon all this frivolity with my teeth. They were still on edge. Down, steadily down, it crept. I looked with a frenzied pleasure in contrasting its downward with lateral velocity, to the right, to the left, far and wide, with a shriek of a damned spirit, to the heart, with the stealthily pace of the tiger. I alternately laughed and howled as one or the other idea grew predominant. Down, certainly relentlessly down, it vibrated within 3 inches of my bosom. I struggled violently, furiously, to free my left arm. This was only from the elbow to the hand. It could reach the ladder, from the ladder beside me to my mouth with great effort, but no further. Could I have broken the fastenings above the elbow, I would have seized and attempted to arrest the pendulum. I might as well have attempted to arrest an avalanche. Down, still increasingly, still inevitably down, I gasped and struggled with each vibration. I shrunk convulsively with its every sweep. My eyes followed outward and upward worlds to the eagerness of the most unmeaning despair. They closed themselves spasmodically at the descent. Although death would have been a relief, how unspeakable still. I quivered at every nerve. I think about how the slight sinking of the machinery would precipitate that keen, glistening axe upon my bosom. It was hope that prompted the nerve to quiver, the frame to shrink. It was hope, the hope that triumphs on the rack, the whispers that the death condemned, that even the dungeons of the damned Inquisition. I saw that some 10 or 12 vibrations would bring the steel in actual contact with my robe. With this observation, there was something that came over my spirit, called the keen collective calmness of despair. For the first time in many hours, perhaps days, I thought it occurred to me that the bandage or seringal would envelop me. It was unique. I was tied to no separate cord. The first stroke of the razor-like crescent athwart on the position of the band, and so detach it that I might be unwound from my person by the means of my left hand. But how fearful in that case, with the proximity of the steel. The result of the slightest struggle, how deadly, was more likely moreover that the minions of the torturer had not foreseen or provided in this possibility. Was it probable that the bandage crossed my bosom in the track of the pendulum? Dreading to find my fate, as I seemed, in the last hope it frustrated, and so far elevated my head as to obtain the distinct view of my breast. The seringal had enveloped my limbs and body in all directions, save for the path of the destroying crescent. Scarcely I dropped my head back into its original position. There flashed upon my mind, which I cannot better describe than the unformed half of the idea of deliverance, which would have perversely eluded, and which immortally only floated indeterminately through the brain, that I raised my food to my burning lips. The whole thought was now present, feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely definite, but still entire. I proceeded once with the nervous energy of despair to attempt its execution. For many hours in this immediate vicinity of the low framework in which I lay, had been literally swarming with rats. They were wild, bold, ravenous, their red eyes glaring upon me as they waited but for motionless on my part to make me their prey. To what food, I thought, had they been accustomed to in the well? They had devoured, in spite of all of my efforts to prevent them, all but a small remnant of the contents of the dish. I had fallen into the habitual seesaw, or the wave of the hand about the platter, and the length, unconscious uniformity of the movement depraved of the effect. In their voracity, the vermin frequently fastened their sharp fangs in my fingers, with particles of the oily, spicy viand now remained. I thoroughly rubbed the bandage wherever I could reach it. Raising my hand from the floor, I lay breathlessly still. At first the ravenous animals were startled and terrified at the change, at the cessation of movement. They shrank alarmingly back. Many thought this as well, but this was only for a moment, which had counted in vain upon their voracity. Observing what remained without motion, one of the two of the boldest had leaped upon the framework and smelt at the surgical. It seemed that for the signal of the general rush forth from the well, they hurried in fresh troops. They clung to the wood. They overran it. They leaped in hundreds upon my person. They measured movement of the pendulum, disturbed them not at all, avoiding its strokes as they busied themselves with the anointed bandage. They pressed, they swarmed upon me in their ever-accumulating heaps. They writhed upon my throat. Their cold lips sought my own. I was half stifled by their thronging pressure. Disgust for what had the world had no name swelled in my bosom and chilled. With heavy clamminess in my heart, yet 1 minute, and felt the struggle which would soon be over. Plainly I perceived the loosening of the bandage. I knew that in one place, and only one place, it must already be severed. With more than human resolution, I stay still. Nor had I erred in my calculations, nor had I endured in vain. At length I felt that I was free. The circle hung up in rib hands from my body, but the stroke of the pendulum had already pressed upon my bosom and divided the serge of the robe. It had cut through the linen beneath. Twice again it swung, and its sharp pains shot through every nerve. At the moment the escape had arrived. With a wave of my hand, the deliverers had hurried tumultuously away. With a steady movement, cautious, sidelong, shrinking and slow, I slid from the embrace of the bandage beyond the reach of the scimitar. For a moment at least, I was free. Free! And in the grasp of the Inquisition, I scarcely stepped from the wooden bed in horror upon the stone floor of the prison. And in a motion the hellish machine ceased, and beheld it drawn up by some invisible force through the ceiling, to which was the lesson I took desperately to heart. Every motion I had doubtedly watched. Free! I had escaped death in one form of agony, to be delivered unto worse a death in some other, which at the thought I rolled my eyes nervously around the barriers of iron that had hemmed me. Something unusual, some change which at first I could not appreciate distinctly, it was obvious, had taken place in the apartment for many minutes of a dreamy and trembling abstraction. I buried myself in vain, unconnected conjecture. During this period, I became aware for the first time of the origin of the sulphurous light which had illuminated the cell. It proceeded from a fissure, about half an inch in width, extending entirely about the prison at the base of the walls, and thus appeared, where completely separate from the floor, I endeavored, but of course in vain, to look through the aperture. As I arose from the attempt, the mystery of the alteration in the chamber broke at once upon my understanding. I had observed that, although outlines of the figures upon the walls were sufficiently distinct, yet the colors seemed blurred and indefinite. These colors had now assumed, or momentarily assuming, a startling and most intense brilliancy that gave to the spectral and fiendish portraitures, and the aspect that I might have thrilled them, firmer nerves of my own. Demon eyes of a wild and ghastly vivacity glared upon me in 1,000 directions, where none had been visible before. It gleamed with the lucrid luster of a fire that could not force my imagination to regard as well. Unreal! Even as I breathed, there came to the nostrils the breath of a vapor of heated iron. A suffocating odor pervaded my prison. A deeper glow settled each moment in the eyes that glared at my agonies. A richer tint of crimson diffused itself over the pictured horrors of blood. I panted, I gasped for breath. There could be no doubt the design of my tormentors. Oh, most unrelenting, oh, most demonic of men! I shrank from the glowing metal to the center of the cell. Amid the thought of the fiery destruction that had impeded the idea of coolness of the well came over my soul like balm. I rushed into its deadly brink. I threw my straining vision below, to glare from the enkindled roof illumined in its inmost recesses. Yet, for a wild moment, did my spirit refuse to comprehend the meaning of what I saw. At length, it wrestled away unto my soul, and it burned itself upon my shuddering reason. Oh, for a voice to speak! Oh, horror! Oh, any horror but this! But with a shriek I rushed from the margin, and buried my face in my hands, weeping bitterly. The heat rapidly increased, and once again I looked up, shuddering as with the fit of the ague. There had been some second change in the cell, and now the change was obviously in the form. As before, it was as vain as I at first endeavored to appreciate, to understand what was taking place. But not because I was left in doubt. The inquisitorial vengeance had been hurried by my twofold escape. There was still no more dallying with the King of Terrors. The room had been square. I saw two of its iron angles that were now acute, consequently obtuse. Fearful difference quickly increased, with a low rumbling or moaning sound. In an instant the apartment had shifted its form into a lozenge. But the alteration stopped not here. I neither hoped or desired it to stop. I could have clasped the red walls to my bosom as a garment of eternal peace. Death, I said, any death but of that pit. Fool might I have been not to know that the pit was the object of the burning iron to urge me. Could I resist its glow? Could I even that withstand its pressure? I now flatter and flatter grew the lozenge. With the rapidity to the left there was no time for contemplation. Its center, of course, with its greatest width, came the yawning gulf. I shrank back, but the closing walls were pressing me relentlessly onward. At length my scared and raving body was there, and no longer an inch of foothold on the firm floor of the prison. I struggled no more, but the agony of my soul found vent in one loud and final scream of despair. I felt that tottered upon the brink. I averted my eyes. There was a discordant hum of human voices. There was a loud blast of many trumpets. There was the harsh grating of 1,000 thunders. The fiery walls rushed back. The outstretched arm caught my own as I fell. Fainting into the abyss was that of General Lassalle. The French army had entered Toledo, and the Inquisition was in the hands of its enemies. What a story, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you again there, Plush. Welcome back. Good to see DJ Ronnie G. Yes, you are permitted to come on to the Alpha After Hours program. Speaking of which, this is going to bring our show to its conclusion. Unfortunately for the poor fellow that thought he was about to die, it must abruptly end at the hands of another. We will be back within the hour. I never forgot to drink water. Oh, I was drinking some water. I was drinking some soda, too. I know. Everybody wants speed. But we have a schedule that we must adhere to. So be sure that if you do like puppetry, and you do like puppet work, and you do like a little bit more of that mature, crazy, not so PG-13 kind of stuff, that's what you have to expect with Alf After Hours. It's not your father's Alf, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine Alf if he were more like BoJack Horseman. Where did he disappear in the 80s? Well, oh yes, Jolly is on next. However, it would be kind of redundant to raid Jolly, because he has much more subscribers than I. So I'm going to go ahead and look at what streams are active, and we're gonna send some of my audience elsewhere while I get something to eat and prepare the show. So I think we have made our selection. I will not announce it here. I'll just make it a bit of a surprise, as it were. Let's go ahead and send them your way. We'll send them your way. One moment. I think I know what we do here. We shall raid this one. All right. Customization, redirect. There we go. Done and done. Raid has been prepared, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into Radio 616 AM modulation, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to subscribe to the channel that I'm sending you to, because this channel I also collaborate with and produce for. In fact, we have our episodic review of Has-Been Hotel releasing every Friday on that channel, guest starring yours truly. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning into Radio 616. This has been an absolutely fun show, and I cannot wait to see you all again for the next one. We will have Alf taking over things here at approximately 11:30. We do need to hustle so that we can get something to eat in between then. That show will only run for an hour, as is tradition, because it is part of a comedy block between the puppet show that Alf is a part of over there at snowdub.com and here. So we are always looking for more collaborators, more people that need a help up as we become the solution to the problem. Out with the old, in with the new. Thank you for tuning into Radio 616 AM modulation. This has been Alastor the Radio Demon, wishing you a wonderful rest of your evening.